Alright guys, today I'll be giving you my top 10 amusement park 1-2 punches. Now, the way I'll be ranking these is by how they rank in my actual rankings. Say you've got an amusement park with the best coaster being my number 10 overall, and the second best coaster being my number 30 overall. That park's going to have a combined score of 40, and the lowest score wins here. Before we start, I do want to mention two parks that I did want to put on this list, but just didn't make the cut. Those are Six Flags Over Georgia at number 11 and Busch Gardens Williamsburg at 12. Those are two really good top twos with Alpengeist and Pantheon and Goliath and Twisted Cyclone, but they didn't quite get into the top 10. So starting off at number 10, we've got Carowinds with Copperhead Strike and Fury 325, giving it a combined score of 53. Now, the order of these two might surprise you if you don't know me. I personally have Copperhead at number 1 in the park and Fury at number 2. I think Fury's just sort of an okay ride. It's a supporting A-tier ride, definitely not an S-tier, not even close. And Copperhead Strike, I think it's an A-tier ride too, but it's got some really strong airtime moments, some fantastic hang time, and it's overall just a really well-rounded ride. So those two combined definitely give Carowinds a good top 2, but definitely not coming close to a top spot on this list. Coming in at number 9 is a very top-heavy park, and this is Busch Gardens Tampa with a combined score of 46, with number 1 being Iron Gwazi and number 2 being Kumba. Obviously, Iron Gwazi's a top 5 coaster for me. It's one of the all-time greats, just relentless pacing, extremely aggressive airtime, you know the drill. But number 2 is way far off from number 1, and that is Kumba. It's a great intensity machine, yes, but at the end of the day, it's a B&M looper, and it's not necessarily the best B&M looper in my opinion. It's still top 50 worthy, but at the end of the day, it really drags this top 2 down, and unfortunately, Iron Gwazi doesn't get to climb any higher than 9. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Six Flags New England with a combined score of 45. This is the complete opposite side of the spectrum. This is a very balanced top 2. The top 2 is really close here. It's Wicked Cyclone and Superman the Ride. I personally have Wicked Cyclone higher than Superman the Ride, but it's definitely a close one. I could see it going either way. Superman the Ride does have good airtime, but it's also got a lot of good speed to it. It's definitely got some pacing issues, which is my big complaint with it, but overall it's a solid ride. And then Wicked Cyclone is your ejector airtime machine. Definitely launches you pretty hard. It's definitely a mid-tier RMC, but honestly, I've grown to appreciate it as the best of the mid-tier RMCs. I definitely know some people don't agree with me there, but it's definitely a really solid ride. And those two combined give Six Flags New England a really solid top 2. Coming in at number 7 is one that definitely needs an update, and this is Six Flags Magic Mountain with Twisted Colossus at number 1 and X2 at number 2 with a combined score of 40. Now, this one really hurts to put it this low because I know if I go back, I'm most likely gonna really like X2 a lot more than I do right now. Before, I sort of didn't like that much intensity and roughness, but I know X2 has top 10 potential for me if I go back now, given my current taste in coasters. But as it stands right now, I have to put it this low. X2, from what I remember, was a good ride, but again, I remember it being rough and inconsistent, which back then I didn't like the roughness. And Twisted Colossus is another mid-tier RMC, so again, this top 2 could shoot up if I go back here someday, but as it stands right now, it's only at number 7, which is pretty good considering I haven't been here in over 5 years. Coming in at number 6, which actually tied Six Flags Magic Mountain, is Dollywood, with Lightning Rod at number 1 and Big Bear Mountain at number 2. Now, the reason I gave the edge to Dollywood is because their star attraction is better than Six Flags Magic Mountain star attraction. Either version of Lightning Rod kills anything Magic Mountain has, and X2 is definitely going to have to put up a fight if it wants to beat Lightning Rod next time I go back, because, yeah, Lightning Rod is currently one of the most underrated coasters I've been on. It is disgusting hearing the things people say about Lightning Rod these days. I personally still have Lightning Rod over Steel Vengeance, even with the lift hill. It's got such fast pacing and incredible ejector airtime. So yeah, definitely do not sleep on Lightning Rod. And Big Bear Mountain is by far the best family coaster in the world right now. I haven't been on every family coaster in the world, obviously, but yeah, this is the best. It is perfect. The theming, the soundtrack, and of course the ride experience with bizarre floater airtime and laterals sprinkled throughout. It's just a pure joy to ride. Definitely one of the most underrated coasters out there, so definitely one of the most underrated top twos that currently exist between Big Bear Mountain and Lightning Rod here at Dollywood. Coming in at number 5 is Islands of Adventure with 36. This top two consists of Velocicoaster at number 1 and Hulk at number 2. Velocicoaster, I'm personally not as high on it as a lot of people. I have it in my top 10, but just barely. I think the Mosasaurus roll is one of the all-time great elements, but then the rest of it is definitely lacking compared to that Mosasaurus roll. And then Hulk, oh my god. Depending on the day you ask me, this could be my favorite inverting B&M. That launch is just so impressively aggressive. There's no other way to describe it. That uphill launch is incredible. And then all the other inversions are very intense and whippy. It's just a very solid top 2 overall, but there are 4 that are definitely better in my opinion. And coming in at number 4 is one that definitely could get shooken up in the future if the rumors are true, and this is Six Flags Great Adventure with El Toro at number 1 and King Ka at number 2. And I think this is the time where I have to address the King Ka situation. Personally, I don't believe it's getting removed this year. I could see it potentially happening next year around this time. But this year, I just don't think it's going to happen. Lantern, sure. But King Ka, I think a lot of those markers are definitely not demolition markers. The demolition ones are white, and these are a completely different color. They're red to my eyes, orange to everyone else's. Which shows that they might not be removing King Ka as quickly as you think. I do think they could remove it in 2025 for a future big Giga Coaster or something in 2027, but it just seems ridiculous. And it also seems ridiculous that everyone's just now saying this is the last weekend it's ever operating, and we're hearing this from who? The park employees who heard it from maybe their managers to say this is it for the season, and then they just took it as, okay, it's done for good. I've worked at a park. I know that a lot of this stuff is potentially false. And unfortunately, a lot of people might be falling for it now. It could be true. There's a slight chance that it's actually done for after this weekend. But I personally do not see that as the case. But let's actually talk about these rides, because it's got a combined score of 27, this park, which is pretty good. King Ka, it will be sad if it gets removed because it is a very good ride. That hydraulic launch is extremely punchy. And of course, number 1 is El Toro, being a borderline top 5 coaster for me with some of the most mental airtime out there. So this is a really good top 2, and it'll be really sad if King Ka goes and ruins that. But I'm sure whatever will replace it will be pretty good, about equally as good hopefully, and maybe even better. So coming in at number 3 is King's Dominion with a combined score of 21, with Twisted Timbers at 2 and Panthurian at number 1. Panthurian is obviously one of the all-time greats, top 10 in the world, maybe even top 5 depending on who you ask. It's just non-stop intensity. It's arguably the most intense coaster in the world for positives and laterals. And then you've got Twisted Timbers, a pretty mid RMC, but that being said, a mid RMC is still amazing, still a top 25 coaster, so it definitely seems fair to give King's Dominion this high of a spot. Coming in at number 2 is Hershey Park, with Wildcats Revenge at 1 and Skyrush at 2. It almost seems unfair that they have this aggressive of ejector airtime machines as their top 2. This could be the best park in the world if you want raw ejector airtime, because Wildcats Revenge, while it's sort of obsolete with Air Force 1 to me, it's still a top 5 coaster for sure. It's incredibly aggressive, some of the strongest airtime you could ever imagine. And then right across the park, you have Skyrush, which also has some of the most aggressive airtime you can imagine. That first drop is the best first drop in the world. It's also got some really good laterals if you know what you're doing. And overall, this top 2 is just extremely tough to beat, with an extremely low combined score of 14. However, coming in at number 1 is Cedar Point, with an even lower combined score of 11, with Maverick at number 2 and Magnum at number 1. If you guys know me, you know Magnum's a top 3 coaster for me. It's just this giant death trap, basically. It's got some of, if not the scariest airtime of all time. You're just going to feel like you're going to die on this ride, basically. It's so strong, it's so aggressive, and the laterals are amazing too. It's a speed monster. Every other aspect except the finale is very underrated, and that finale is just as aggressive as people say. It's truly the closest thing there is to Air Force One's finale. And coming in at number 2 is Maverick, with one of, if not the most diverse layout ever. It's got everything you could want in a coaster, and it does it all very well. So that is the top 10 amusement park 1-2 punches I have experienced. Let me know what your guys' top 10 amusement park 1-2 punches are in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.